Hi, in this video I show you how I edit landscape photography taken on a Canon 5D Mark IV. Hi, I'm Adam and welcome to First Man Photography, the channel that will help you take your photography to the next level. If you haven't done so yet, please do follow me on Instagram. It's a great place to share our work, look at each other's work, and there's also some great conversation going on as well. I'll put a link down below and I'll see you there. Okay, let's get into this. It's been a while since we've been back in the studio. I've been away to Mull and to the Lake District last week. Lots of great landscape photography vlogs for you to watch. If you haven't seen them yet, please do check them out. And if you enjoyed them, I'd really appreciate it because it would help me out if you would share the videos. Share them on Instagram, Reddit, Twitter, Facebook, that kind of thing. I'd really appreciate it. The vlog last week, I was in the Lake District, and while I was shooting the images, it really made me think, since I've been using the Canon 5D Mark IV, I've actually changed the way I've been shooting a little bit because of the superb dynamic range that camera has and the detail you can pull out of the shadows. So I think the best thing to do is just to get into the computer. I'll go through the editing process and just talk a little bit more about how I have been changing my editing process. So let's get into the computer now. And what I'm talking about is utilizing the dynamic range of the Canon 5D Mark IV to capture everything in the scene with one exposure. And that's what I've done here by purposely underexposing the foreground here and the shadow areas. So I've exposed for the sky, as you can see here. There's lots of detail in that sky. And I know with this camera, I can pull that detail back out of that shadow area without too much trouble and without introducing that much noise. I don't like using ND grad filters, and I've talked about that quite a bit recently. And I don't think it would have particularly worked in this image because I've got the mountains here that would have come below the skyline. And I've also got a higher exposure on the reflection here. So that would potentially have been overexposed if I'd used an ND grad. But I don't like using it. I want to save time by not using it. So let's get into editing this photo and I will show you what I mean. So we're going to start on the exposure and just drag that up a little bit. I may have gone a little bit too far on this image with underexposing it, but I know I can pull it back anyway. So the next thing I'm going to do is just scroll down to the profile correction here and just remove that vignette a little bit. This is a long exposure. I'm at f20, 35 seconds at 17mm, so it has introduced a little bit of vignetting with this image, and I'm going to remove that just by using a lens correction. I am then going to increase the shadows a bit just to bring some of the detail out of that foreground. And what I've been doing recently is using the software grads to control the exposure on these parts of my image. So I'm going to leave it about there, keep it straight and increase the shadows a little bit more and drag the exposure up overall on that foreground. I want to reduce the highlights a bit to pull some of the detail back out of the reflection in the water there. And then I'm going to draw another one into the sky here to bring the exposure down in the sky a little bit as well here. And you can see how effective that is in software. It's brought the exposure down on the mountains a little bit here. So I'm going to bring that back with a bit of a shadow boost right up to 100. So if we look at the histogram now, it's a nice shaped histogram, but I just want to bring the whites back up to pure white. There we go. And then back down on the blacks to bring out pure blacks. And I have a nice even exposure across my image there now. And I'm going to then add some nice contrast to that image up to about there on the slider. And then I'll probably add in a medium contrast curve as well. And the image is starting to come together. So now I'm going to adjust the colour. I might just drag the shadows up a little bit more on that foreground. Yeah, that's working nicely for me there. Now I'm going to add the colour. I'm going to add a little bit of vibrance, a little bit of saturation to bring those colours out. And then I'm going to adjust the white balance to bring it back up to that nice sort of warm feeling that I had at the time of shooting. And that's really bringing the warmth out of those clouds there, the nice warm reflection there, and especially on this mountain in the distance where the light is hitting it. Because of this cloud here, there wasn't that much light hitting this mountain here, the snow-capped mountain here, so that is not quite as warm as the rest of the image, but that works for me. I might add a little bit of clarity there, and I want to bring out the blue in the sky there a little bit, so I'm just going to add in a little bit of blue saturation there. And if we now, I might just add a little bit of tint in as well, undo that a bit. I don't want to go too crazy on that and affect it too much, but if we click F, and you can see that is starting to look like a pretty good image. Just to show you the detail, though, that camera has in those shadow areas, if we zoom in to the corner here, I have lost a little bit of sharpness, but part of that is going to be because it's a long exposure, and you've got to accept that with sort of grasses and reeds and things like this when you're doing a long exposure. So I have lost a bit of sharpness there, but if we look at this rock, it's still pretty decent. I will, though, add, there is a little bit of noise there, so I'm just going to add a tiny bit of noise reduction on there, on the luminance and on the colour. And if you look close, you can see a tiny little bit of aberration still as well. So I'm going to go into the manual controls here and just add a bit of defringe back in to the green and the purple there, and that is now starting to look pretty good. So then if we hit the reset button, you can really see the difference that where we started to get to there. And given that that's so dark there, and then we go back to there, that is very good detail with not a lot of noise at all in those corner areas. And to notice that if you printed this big, you would really have a hard time. You'd have to look very closely, pixel peep to your heart's content to pick out the noise in that image. And I'm very, very happy with how that image now looks. Let's go on to one more image. It had clouded over a little bit by this point, so there's not quite as much dynamic range in this image, but it's still captured with one long exposure of 105 seconds at f20, and I'm going to start by just increasing the exposure a little bit and then bringing that ND grad over the sky to bring the exposure down a little bit on there, bring out some of the detail, and then I'm going to increase the shadows back up again so I don't lose the exposure in the top of the mountain here. So then I'm going to do a similar sort of thing from the bottom of the screen to increase the exposure in the foreground. And I can do that just by upping the exposure a little bit, increasing the shadows, and then I have a nice even exposure across the scene. Again, I'm going to bring in the true white, a bit too far on that one, bring in the true black as well, and then add in my all-important contrast to that image. I'm going to add contrast there. I'm also going to add a medium contrast curve to it as well, and then just up the shadows across the image to really start to bring out the detail in that foreground. Now I'm going to add my colour back to the image to bring it back up to what I was seeing with my own eyes. So a bit of vibrance, bit of saturation, a little bit of clarity as well. And then I'm not far away. I might just drag the highlights down a little bit more and then warm the image up just a little bit. Overall, that's a little bit too far. And there, I am not too far off. Let's just go down to the profile corrections as well and just remove that vignette that's been caused by that lens again. I don't want to remove the distortion though, so I'll put that back in. And there I'm getting pretty close to my final image. Let me just drag the overall exposure down a little bit, and there we have a pretty well exposed image. And if we can hit F to review that, and I'm not 100% with the composition because where I was there, I was on a bit of a ledge, so I couldn't really get much closer. So what I think I'll do is just go into the crop tool and just crop the foreground a little bit up to there, just to bring that composition into where I want it to be. And then I'll have this rock in my foreground leading you into the image, which is what that has done. So there, I don't think it's far off. I may go back into it later just to put those final adjustments to it. But if I hit F again, that's coming pretty close. So to make these adjustments, I'm using Adobe Lightroom. If you haven't used that before, or you haven't seen it before, I'll put a link down below for you to check that out, and you'll get a free trial as well. You also get Adobe Photoshop with that, but since I've been using the Canon 5D Mark IV, you can shoot these images just with one exposure because of that dynamic range, I haven't been going into Photoshop nearly as much as I used to, and I've been sticking in Lightroom. Lightroom's getting better all the time. It allows you to do more, but Lightroom is where I'm doing the vast majority of my editing these days. I'm liking underexposing like this. I didn't mean to do it. It just sort of started to happen naturally because I realized I could pull the detail out of those shadows. It's really increased my efficiency. It's letting me capture 9 or 10 images on this trip, as well as all the video I'm doing as well. So I'm not spending that much time taking each image, and it's working really well for me. You may want to do things your way, do things a bit slower if you have the time, but I'm doing as much as I possibly can. I'm trying to be efficient and use underexposing like I am doing with the Canon 5D Mark IV with these high dynamic range scenes that I have in landscapes like this. It's really working for me, and I'm really pleased with how things are going. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that. Please give the video the thumbs up if you did, and leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. I'd be interested to find out if you think this sort of process is cheating, or are you a purist? Does it annoy you a little bit? Or are you like me, just wanting to get the very best out of the camera that you are using so you can really tell the story that you want to tell? Also, if you haven't done so already, please do subscribe to the channel for new videos every Sunday and every Wednesday, and I'll see you on another one very soon. I'm Adam, this is First Man Photography,